Morgan and Anissa were two 12-year-old girls who were consumed by an obsession with the Slender Man character from a horror website. They believed that the Slender Man was real and that he had chosen them to be his proxies. They spent countless hours reading about the character and discussing their plans to become his followers. Morgan and Anissa's obsession with the Slender Man character grew stronger with the passage of time. They became increasingly erratic in their behavior, spending most of their time talking about the Slender Man and planning their next move. The girls came up with a plan to become proxies of the Slender Man by carrying out a series of tests to prove their loyalty. They believed that if they were successful, the Slender Man would appear to them and take them away to live with him forever. The first test involved cutting themselves and offering their blood as a sacrifice to the Slender Man. Morgan and Anissa carried out the test in secret, but soon became obsessed with the idea of taking things further. They began to plan the murder of their classmate in order to impress the Slender Man. They believed that by killing someone, they would prove their worthiness as his followers and gain his favor. Morgan and Anissa spent hours discussing their plan, going over the details again and again. They decided to carry out the attack in the woods, where they could be sure that no one would see them. As the days passed, the girls became increasingly fixated on their plan. They stopped going to school and spent most of their time online, reading about the Slender Man and planning their next move. Their parents noticed that something was wrong, but they had no idea what their daughters were planning. Morgan and Anissa seemed like normal 12-year-olds, but they were hiding a dark and dangerous secret. As the day of the attack approached, Morgan and Anissa became more and more nervous. They knew that what they were planning was wrong, but they couldn't stop themselves. On the day of the attack, the girls met their classmate near their home and led her into the woods. They had brought a knife with them and told the victim that they were going to play a game of hide and seek. As they walked deeper into the woods, the girls began to act strangely. They giggled and whispered to each other, and the victim started to feel uneasy. She tried to turn back, but Morgan and Anissa insisted that they were almost at their destination. When they reached a secluded spot in the woods, Morgan and Anissa attacked the victim. The victim tried to run, but Morgan and Anissa grabbed the victim by the neck and legs. The victim begged for her life, but Morgan and Anissa both were mad at the obsession of the Slender Man. They stabbed her repeatedly and left her for dead. Both Morgan and Anissa felt an eternal pleasure as they were watching the victim struggling for her life, and left her struggling more and more alone in the woods. Fortunately, the victim managed to crawl away and was eventually found by a passing cyclist. The police were called, and a massive search was launched for Morgan and Anissa. The girls were eventually found and taken into custody, where they showed no remorse for what they had done. Their parents were shocked and horrified by their daughter's actions. They had no idea that their girls were capable of such brutality, and they struggled to come to terms with what had happened. In the aftermath of the attack, the community was left in shock. Parents were afraid to let their children out of their sight, and the victim's family struggled to come to terms with what had happened. Morgan and Anissa were charged with attempted murder and sent to a juvenile detention center. The girls showed no remorse for their actions and continued to talk about the Slender Man as if he were a real person. As the trial approached, the girls' parents tried to come up with a defense for their daughters. They argued that the girls were not in their right minds when they carried out the attack and that they had been influenced by the Slender Man character. The defense was widely criticized, and many people argued that the girls should be held accountable for their actions. However, the judge ultimately ruled that Morgan and Anissa were not competent to stand trial and ordered them to undergo psychiatric treatment. The treatment was difficult and intense. But over time, the girls began to show signs of improvement. They began to distance themselves from the Slender Man character and started to understand the severity of their actions. After several years of treatment, Morgan and Anissa were released from the juvenile detention center. They were placed on probation and ordered to undergo continued psychiatric treatment. The community was divided over their release, with some arguing that they should be locked up for life and others believing that they deserved a second chance. The Slender Man attack left a lasting impact on everyone involved, and the scars of the incident would never fully heal. In the years that followed, the Slender Man attack became a cautionary tale. Parents and educators around the world used the incident as an example of the dangers of online culture and the importance of monitoring children's internet activity. The victim, Peyton, made a remarkable recovery and became an advocate for mental health awareness. She used her experience to help others who had been through similar traumas and became a symbol of hope for those who had been impacted by the attack. Morgan and Anissa continued to receive treatment and were eventually able to move on from the incident. They both expressed deep remorse for their actions and spoke openly about the dangers of online culture and the impact it can have on vulnerable individuals. As they entered adulthood, Morgan and Anissa found it difficult to escape the notoriety of their past. They struggled to find jobs and form relationships, and many people in their community still viewed them as dangerous. Despite the challenges they faced, Morgan and Anissa persevered. They continued to receive treatment and worked hard to rebuild their lives. They eventually found jobs and even formed meaningful relationships with others who had been through similar struggles. The Slender Man attack left a lasting impact on everyone involved, but it also served as a reminder of the importance of mental health awareness and the dangers of online culture. While the scars of the incident would never fully heal, the community was able to come together and find strength in the face of tragedy.